the juiciest, tastiest char-grilled hot dogs, burgers, solid filet of fish and chicken, and 90% fat-free pulled pork barbecue. That's a little sweet and a little spicy. You know, Dairy Queen doesn't use processed and formed junk like the competition. So come on down to Dairy Queen, Silver Springs, home of the real $5 lunch.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. The Affordable Health Care Act has caused a lot of different debates, and it wasn't all about the mandatory purchasing of insurance. Sometimes it was the mandatory offering of certain aspects of that insurance, and I think just by saying that, you probably know where I'm going with this. Hobby Lobby being maybe the poster child for this, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Hobby Lobby story, and how they felt they were being unfairly forced to participate in something that is opposite of their beliefs as far as offering contraceptives to their employees.
Yes.
The issue is a dividing issue. There are people who absolutely embrace this and say, yeah, you go Hobby Lobby, you got to tell the government they can't be telling you what you should and shouldn't do. There are other people who say Hobby Lobby needs to be boycotted, and they're doing an injustice to their employees. I'm on the former. I'm the first. I'm on the side of the first. In other words, I want to. I think it should be. I don't think the government should ever tell you that you have to buy anything. Period.
Exactly.
You know. Now, and before you bring up, well, what about auto insurance? Yeah, but I don't have to drive a car.
That's right.
You know. But I mean, okay. So let's just come halfway here and say, well, what about the health insurance and all that? Okay, so health insurance. But why would you force somebody to buy for somebody else something that is against your religion?
Yeah.
Which is where we're going with this. On the phone is somebody who can speak much more articulately about it than I can. Andrew V. Abela is on the phone. He's the Dean of the School of Business and Economics and the Associate Professor of Marketing at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And his book is called A Catechism for Business, Tough Ethical Questions and Insights from Catholic Teaching. I can't wait to hear about this. Andrew Abela. Good morning, Andrew.
Morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin.
And are you in D.C. right now?
I am, yes.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the air with us today. Yeah, and I'm not even sure I even kept up with this story. Where does it stand right now? Is Hobby Lobby still going to be forced to buy the contraceptives?
So we're waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court, which will be in June, once they deliver their decision.
Do you think we would have the same issue if another religion was being forced to do something that they oppose? Do you know what I mean? Are Catholics being singled out here, do you think?
You know, I have noticed that it seems like about the only religion that you can feel free to pick on is Christians, you know.
Right.
Sometimes it feels that way. I don't know if that's the case, but it does feel that way. I believe the Greens, the owners of the Hobby Lobby, are evangelical Christians, and so what they object to is having to pay for abortion-causing drugs or contraceptives that also cause abortions, because they have a strong belief that abortion is wrong, is murder, right? So,
right.
And so I can totally understand their point of view and totally respect that. And in fact, it's kind of scary that there are so many people who think that they are in the wrong, that living your faith is somehow illegal, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what I kind of stumbled through in my intro. If all you have to do is go online and type in Hobby Lobby contraceptives, and you'll see articles extreme to the left, extreme to the right. And to my thinking, what if we just abided by the Constitution? Wouldn't that solve this problem?
Right away, right? Because what Hobby Lobby is not saying, if you work for us, you can't have an abortion or you can't use contraceptives. They're not saying that. They're just saying, we're not going to pay for you to do
exactly.
that. We don't, because we think that's immoral. That just seems so reasonable to me, you know, that in fact, the government goes off in a totally different direction. In their brief for the case, what they wrote is, Hobby Lobby is a for-profit corporation, so all they should care about is making money, and then the rest of it kind of just they shouldn't be concerned about that and its effect on their religion.
Exactly.
Which is a bizarre thing to say when you think about it.
Right, and I'm with you exactly. Now, the book is not just about this, though, right? The book is about the ethics across the board.
Absolutely. So this book we've been working on for 7 years. So we didn't anticipate this case. We happen to have one of the questions there, but there are 144 questions in the book. And what we did is we collected teachings from the Catholic Church over the past 100 years or so that are very relevant to business. They're about advertising or about socialism or about profits or unions, whatever. Lots of very what seems to us very reasonable teaching. So not just if you happen to be Catholic, but other Christians, really anybody. It's a very, in a sense, bipartisan approach to how to be moral in business.
The other news item recently was, and I can't remember the decision on this one either. It was the wedding cake for the gay couple, and the I think it was a wedding cake, wasn't it? And the bakery that refused to make it because it was something they didn't want to be a party to.
Yes. I believe the guy lost, and I think he's gone out of business because of it. And I mean, I think you can draw a division. You can say, you can understand if you don't like the way a business runs, then you stay away from that business. You know, there are many businesses in my town, you know, for example, those that traffic in pornography, which I think are despicable, and I avoid them as best I can, you know. Yeah. So no, I think we'll see more and more of these issues where saying that, you know, just because it's your religion, you shouldn't be free to do what you like. But the thing is, my religion defines the meaning of life for me and defines my life. I try to live according to it, you know. And I think a majority of Americans live that way, and that's why, you know, in many cases, why they do the good that they do, because they're trying to live by a moral code, right?
And I think that's why government feels threatened, because people do, for right now, still have the freedom of choice because of the Constitution. And if a woman is employed by a private entity and she wants birth control, then she shouldn't have to be forced to go to her employer to get that policy. She should be able to go outside to get a policy, or just go to the public health system that every community has and get free birth control.
Yeah, I mean, all of the employees of the Hobby Lobby right now don't have this coverage, and they seem to be perfectly happy because they're there, they're working, you know, and the government is coming in. I mean, I wonder how many of the millions of people whose healthcare coverage was denied, was revoked by this law, had it revoked because their coverage didn't cover contraception.
Oh, I bet you they all did. I bet you every one of them did. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like someone saying you can't have you like your health care, but you can't keep it because it doesn't cover contraception.
Right. You know, you're onto something, and I think you're probably right. Do you know, one of the questions I've asked a lot of times, and this would be a guest who, for example, was trying to talk about the stock market. And one of the questions I've often asked is, if I'm your client and you're going to be my broker, whatever you call it, right? Yep. I want to know if I'm going to buy stock in, let's say, a XYZ company, okay? But I don't want to buy stock in XYZ company if they have a satellite company that is like pornography or something that I'm not in agreement with. In other words, I have some ethical interest in the product XYZ company makes, I'm fine with. But they've got a sub company that I'm not happy with, and I want to know about it before I invest in them. Am I talking to one of the subjects of the book?
Yes, actually, that's central to the book. Christian teaching makes a difference between kind of two kinds of evils. One is where you do something wrong and you deliberately intend to do the wrong thing, right? And then you kill somebody or something. And there's others where you end up supporting some wrongdoing.
You're a party to it, yeah.
You party to it, but you don't intend it. You know, so let's say you're very poor and you've got a family to support, and the only job you can get is a cleaning, say for a cleaning company, and the cleaning company sends you at night to clean the offices of an abortion clinic, for example. You know,
right.
And let's say you happen to despise abortion, you think it's evil, right? Are you morally wrong for in some small way helping out because you're cleaning their offices? You know, and what church teaching says is, if you don't intend the evil, and the only way to get out of it is to create some even bigger evil, so, your kids are going to starve or something, then it's not wrong for you to do that. But if there's any way you can get out of it, go work for another cleaner or say to the boss, I really don't like to clean that place, it creeps me out, then you should get out of it if you can. But if getting out of it causes a bigger problem. And so, so the application to your question about a stockbroker, I think it's right for one to say, I only want to invest my money in things that are moral, right? And there's usually other companies you can invest in, so you should try to stay away from companies that you think do corrupt or harmful things.
You talk about working conditions and unions in your book. Is that due because of the corruption?
The church has, for many, many years, kind of spoken about unions and says a lot of positive things, certainly affirms the right to unionize. But then it also says very clearly that the union shouldn't be used as a political tool, which sadly, in so many cases, they seem to be. And so what you need to do is find a way to kind of support the rights of the workers without then abusing their kind of collaboration to advance one party's political agenda, for example.
Wow. I would say that more than half of the people I grew up with in New York are Catholic, are probably working in jobs that are union jobs. Yeah, and I wouldn't have even thought that would have even been an issue. But I guess what you're saying is that if they're involved in politics, which of course they are, but it's kind of like, what do you do? I mean, you can't leave your job. I mean, you got to. In many cases, they would be firefighters and the blue collar workers, basically.
Yeah. No, you're right. In many cases, you're sort of trapped, and again, you just have to do what is prudent in the circumstances. But that's what we try to do with the book is we collected all the church teaching. So it's not our opinion. We literally cut and paste. And we spent, as I say, 7 years searching through all these many documents, and then we put them in there so people can look through the questions and study the questions and then reflect, is there anything I can do myself? And sometimes there's nothing you can do, but sometimes there is. You can work with others to improve things, or you can change your job, or or you can just, in many cases, taking advantage of what we list in the book, just actually makes the business better. So if you run a business in particular, you have more degrees of freedom, right? Because you're the boss, right? Or if you run a division, department, and so on. So that's particularly good for people like that, because you can read the book and go, maybe I can improve the way I treat my people, for example. And usually when you do that, the department gets better, and you get more successful.
The one thing that happens sometimes is that a business will present. Like the fact that they're Christian, so they'll put like a cross up on the wall, or they'll put little sayings up on the wall, and you go in there and you don't feel like they're being very Christian like at all.
Yeah.
A lot of times I question just that kind of thing, and then just to be fair and mention the other side, I do business with quite a few people who would, if I was accidentally double charged, I'd get my money back. They wouldn't hesitate for a second to pay me back, Yeah. And by the way, they're not just Christians. There's a Jewish company owner I know. He'd do the same thing. He would be just as moral. So the label itself, being Christian, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be treated more fair than somebody who's not Christian. Mm-hmm. Does that seem fair?
No, it does. And in fact, G.K. Chesterton, the famous Catholic writer, once wrote, he said, "It's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, but it's never really been tried." So what he's saying is all of us who claim to be Christians, we all have our serious failings, and I think that's the danger of putting the label up and saying, we're a Christian company and so on, is you in a sense you cause scandal if when people come in and they say, well, is this how Christians treat people? So in some ways it puts you're taking on a greater responsibility if you're going to flag, this is who we are. Then you better rise up to that occasion. Right?
So I'm fascinated with the book. It's called A Catechism for Business: Tough Ethical Questions and Insights from Catholic Teaching. So I'm curious if you could maybe give us some examples of some of the tough ethical questions that are referred to in the subtitle.
Sure. So we start out with questions about capitalism and socialism. That's always an ongoing debate, and people are interested to know, what does the church say about that? Some people assume that the church is all in favor of socialism, but in fact, the fact is it's entirely the contrary, is that for decade after decade, pope after pope, have said that socialism is not the solution because it gets in the way of liberty, and oftentimes it gets in the way of religious liberty, as we are experiencing
Absolutely,
right now, right? But then it says, in terms of capitalism, yes, but. And the yes is yes in favor of liberty and kind of free enterprise and so on. But the but is, it's a warning against anyone who would say, hey, let the market decide and that's all going to be fair. As a Christian, you still have a responsibility to run your company well and not to say, oh, yes, so long as I make profits, then everything will trickle down. You might remember about a year ago, I think it was Pope Francis criticized this idea of trickle down. And what he meant by that was we all have to be responsible for our businesses. We don't just say we make money and then we expect it to sort of spread around.
Right. Is tithing addressed in the book? And I'll just ask a part B to the question, or part two. Does the Bible, or does the Catholic Church maybe suggest that a business tithe in addition to the personal tithings of the people who own the business?
I have not actually heard that as a suggestion. Whenever I've heard tithing referred to, it's always at the personal level. So the owner of the business would tithe, I guess, from the profits that you would get from the business. But there's no objection to it. I know there are many companies that set aside a certain portion of their profits to give to some cause, and that's certainly very noble. And I think people who buy from them and people who work there kind of feel a sense of contribution because of that. So that's the beauty of a free enterprise system, is you can have people doing that for the environment or for animals or for poor people, or whatever the thing that you feel called to, you can do, rather than waiting for the government to say you should focus on this or focus on that.
Does age have anything to do with the topics in your book? Is this more geared for people over 21, or can young adults learn from this also?
I think, from what I see, so we have a business school at Catholic U that is relatively new. There's a lot of enthusiasm about young people who seek a business career because they want to, they have that idealism of youth, which is they want to do good as well as be in business. And so what the book shows is that these teachings really are focused on helping you do both. So how to be successful in business and also how to have a feeling of a sense of contribution to society kind of at the same time.
One of the questions a businessman might ask himself or herself, or if it was a businesswoman, is the products that they actually sell. Now, you mentioned pornography before. If I owned a little convenience store and I had kids coming in, to buy. When I was a kid, I would go to this little candy store and buy candy. Now, behind the counter, I never saw anything that would have made me giggle or be or curious. You know what I mean? But nowadays, you see it a lot. I mean, right behind the counter, there's these magazines that are available if you ask for them and you're of age. But I think as a businessman, I wouldn't want them there. I wouldn't want those magazines there so that the kids could even see them, let alone. But tobacco, what about tobacco or even alcohol? Does the catechism suggest anything about that?
Yes. So we have questions related exactly to do you have a moral responsibility for the products that you sell? Absolutely yes, is the answer. And then it does actually talk about alcohol, tobacco, armaments, pornography, and so on. And and I think this is a really important and useful distinction, is make a distinction between things that are always wrong, always harmful, no matter how you use them. Pornography and drugs are examples of those. People will talk about recreational use of drugs, but it's still destroying your brain cells and leading you.
Right.
So there's no such thing as casual use of pornography. That's just going to drag you down. So it's always bad. And so, if at all possible, if you run a corner store or whatever, if you have the control, you eliminate those things from your store, because the damage you do, the moral damage to families, to people's lives, and so on, it's just frightening about this pornography. But then something like tobacco or alcohol, these things can be used in moderation. I know it's kind of unpopular or politically incorrect to say that, but if you kind of up to a person's judgment. If you can smoke socially and not get addicted, then fine. So it's not per se immoral to produce and sell cigarettes. Likewise, firearms. Again, that's we have a constitutional right to bear arms. Firearms can be abused, but you're a hunter. There's absolutely nothing immoral with that, right? So that's the important distinction: is the thing that you're selling, can it be used reasonably? There's also, for example, gambling is another example. A good friend of mine ran a casino. The guy was exemplary in terms of making sure, providing every possibility to help people, kind of warn them off if they even have kind of a temptation towards sort of gambling addiction, and just try to make it a place for recreation and fun without damaging people's lives.
Can I ask a question about something that we do? We do advertising, and if if you go to an advertising agency and some hotshot advertising kid says, "This is what you need. You need a lady in a bikini," and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with ladies in bikinis, but I'm just using that as an example that maybe somebody would be uncomfortable with. But this is going to help sell product. I mean, how does the Catechism address that kind of thing? Not maybe what you're selling, but how you're attracting people to your business.
Yes, there is actually, we have a whole section on advertising. And it's very clear that advertising should be respectful. And when you think about it, if you use sort of sensation to try to sell your products, you might get a short-term lift, but usually at the cost of kind of more long-term customers going, this is not, I don't appreciate this, And even if it did make you more money, it's worth thinking about, is that what I want?
You remember
go ahead.
There was a Super Bowl ad with the girls coming out of it was a beer ad where they were coming out of the helicopter in bikinis in parachutes. And it was Bush or one of them. And they got a lot of flack from the public. Not from religious organizations, but from women's organizations.
I think rightfully so. I mean, you don't want to get to the point where you get too paranoid about everything you do, but I think just reasonable good taste. I think we have a society that has a serious problem about being disrespectful to women.
Yes.
In terms of the way we portraying them as sex objects and so on. This is really, really harmful. Pornography is the worst extreme, but there's other ways of doing that. And how can you, on the one hand, claim that we want to treat women equally, and then on the other hand, portray them as objects?
Right. You're 100% right.
They look like they were having fun, though. I wanted to be one of those.
And I guess the last question would be about wages. Is there a religious guideline for how much you pay your employees?
There is, and it's that as an employer you have a responsibility to pay them what's called a just wage, which is a wage enough to live on. And there's lots of controversy about this, and it's you're not obliged to do that if it's going to bankrupt the business, because then nobody wins that way. But the implications are that you should be looking at your employees and thinking, am I paying them enough? And if not, what can I do to give them opportunities to develop and improve themselves so they can add more value to the business, and I can promote them and pay them more money?
The book is called A Catechism for Business. It's written by Andrew V. Abela. The subtitle is Tough Ethical Questions and Insights from Catholic Teachings. How do we get the book?
It's available at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and all good bookstores.
And do you have a website?
Yes, catechismforbusiness.com.
Well, that's easy enough. Catechismforbusiness.com. All right, very, very thought-provoking interview, Andrew. Thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you both.
All right, we will take a little break and be right back.
On the next Voice of OCAL, it's Pop Culture Thursday. Lori Martin Gregory, she joins Buddy Martin. I'm going to be away for the day, but Buddy and Lori will get you through with pop culture and healthy living. And then it's Around the Water Cooler. Tom James, Buddy Martin, and the crew get you set up for the University of Florida's NCAA Final Four run. All that and more on the next Voice of OCAL, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, streaming live at WOCA.com, The Source.
The biggest air show in the South is back in Lakeland. Sun and Fun International Fly-In celebrates its 40th year April 1st through 6th. This year promises to be bigger, faster, and louder than ever before. Experience the heart-thumping, awe-inspiring performance of the U.S. Navy Blue Angels and the Air Force's F-22 Raptor. See thousands of aircraft, both in the air and on display, and an open flight line of historic warbirds. Sun and Fun offers fun for the whole family, with daily air shows, a kids zone and lots of great food. Make Saturday, April 5th a day the family will remember with two